What do you think Thomas Tuchel's most likely formation and starting 11 will be for these qualifiers? Core blimey.
So it's tough to say.
Okay, I'll have the first one. Jordan Pickford in goal.
Oh, well done, mate. God, excellent. That's the only one I've got written down here. Oh, Vish is going to win again.
He's over here.
No, I think it's always really, really difficult at the start of a new manager's regime to understand what they're thinking.
Mm-hmm.
He's thrown us a couple of curveballs anyway, hasn't he?
Yes.
The game tomorrow night's Albania, right?
Yes.
So Albania first up, who Andy said yesterday is going to be probably the trickier of the two teams. And I would go along with that. So, but the point is that he hasn't delivered a first 11 before. There'll be a lot of people excited and anticipating what it's going to look like. And the curveballs have come already. You know, we weren't expecting one or two additions that we've seen. We weren't expecting Henderson to be in there. There's one or two that perhaps are lucky to be in there. There's one or two that are unfortunate to miss out. I think when I looked into this, I thought I'm fairly confident it'll be a 4-2-3-1.
Yeah.
You might think it'll be a 4-3-3. Maybe we'll come on to that.
4-2-3-1, 4-3-3.
It doesn't really matter, does it? I don't think we need to get into too much detail on that. And I think I can guess 6-ish players.
Yeah. I mean, all you need to know nowadays is it a back four or a back three?
Yeah.
Although, again, different phases of play. But that's it. And presumably it's one up top. You know, that's... You know, the midfielders, again, you can start talking about this, that and the other. But,
do you want to hear the 5 or 6 players I think will definitely start?
Yeah, go on then. So 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3, whatever you want to call it.
So first of all, I've gone for Aaron Ramsdale in goal.
The first of your Southampton picks.
Yeah, I just think Albania are a good side. We need someone who's used to picking the ball out of the net. I've seen him do it with such panache.
I was going to say, someone who's not going to let the head drop if the ball gets put past them. So come on, pickers in goal.
I just want to check as well if England have got more points in their UEFA Nations League group than Southampton got all season in the Premier League.
They would have done.
I think they did.
They would have done, yeah.
No, Pickford in goal, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you want me to go from left back to right or right back to left?
Well, I tend to go from left back first, but I think the general consensus is you go from right back. So go with me.
Okay, left back first.
Because that's the trickier pick.
I think he'll play Miles Lewis-Skelly left back.
I think so as well.
Yeah. I think Gay will be one of the centre backs.
Yes.
I don't know who the other one will be.
Oh, okay.
I'm just giving you the 5 or 6 I know. And the reason I've gone 5 or 6 is because at right back I've got Walker or James.
He's going to go with James.
Okay. So
loves Reece James from his time at Chelsea as well. And let's be fair, Reece James is the best candidate for that job right now.
I agree.
Because I think... Yeah, I mean, I think he's asked to do a different job for Chelsea at the moment. We don't see him overlapping and doing all that good stuff, which he would have done a bit more maybe under Tuchel, though he's obviously a wing-back.
I think he might be able to overlap a bit against Albania.
I think he'll remember how to do it.
Yeah. Rice obviously will play.
Yes, in the centre.
And Kane will play.
Yeah.
Other than that, you've got to answer who the 3 players are going to be behind Kane,
mm-hmm.
who is going to play alongside Rice, and who's going to play alongside Gay.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's quite difficult to call for a first 11, partly because there's 2 main reasons. One, because we've got quite a lot of good attacking players,
mm-hmm.
and 2, because he's picked like Walker and Henderson, and you think if you're really confident that James is going to play instead of Walker, it makes me just think, well, what's the point of picking him then?
Mm-hmm.
What have you? I mean, and I suppose he might say, do you know what? I'm new to the job. I'm not culturally that similar to these guys because I've had a different background, all the rest of it. I need some senior pros in there who are going to help smooth this over for me. And so that's why he's picked Walker. That's why he's picked Henderson. But I would kind of argue that Pickford and Kane and Rice, just to name 3, are all kind of senior pros with lots of caps. You know, they can kind of, maybe they're not the right kind of character.
What are they like around the training ground?
Kane's the captain, for God's sake.
Yeah, I know, yeah. But I think yeah. Look,
so can you fill in those blanks then, do you think?
Yeah, I think I can give it a damn good go.
Because I would have been like, you know what? For me, the best player this season behind the front man has been Morgan Gibbs-White. But he wasn't in the squad.
Yeah.
He only added him later on.
So I think...
So is he realistically going to start him?
No, I don't think he's going to start him. Not against Albania. I think against Albania, he'll go for more obvious choices. And then in the second game against Latvia, I think you might see a few faces coming into the side, at least as subs, maybe 1 or 2 starters, who he's going to have a look at. And I think he's told us why he's picked Jordan Henderson. There's no need.
But I get that, but I'm asking you whether that means he's going to play or not.
No, I don't think he's going to play. Not against Albania.
Because if you actually look, if you want to boil down the Henderson selection to a little bit of detail, you say, well, he's playing quite a limited role at Ajax, just shielding the back 4. That's all he's really asked to do.
A resurgent Ajax who were top of the league last.
They're top of the league.
Okay, they got.
But it's not a great Ajax team.
No.
Okay, and I listened to the radio on Sunday night, and it was Danny Kelly and Andy Brassel. I
know Andy, yeah.
Yeah, our mate Andy.
Yeah.
He talks a lot of shit.
He's a bit annoying.
Sometimes he's spot on.
Sometimes he gets it right.
He said that they had the guy, the editor or the sports editor of the Telegraph, which is the big, a big newspaper out of Amsterdam, who said all this stuff about Henderson. He said, no one really likes Henderson. I'm paraphrasing here. No one really likes him because he has conducted himself quite badly
in the media.
Yeah, and he kind of basically gaslit us in that press conference about going to Monaco. But he's done what he's done, and he's been reliable. He's fit. He's
been captain for Ajax.
Yeah, but he is captain. But he also said, Marcus, he said everyone in the office fell off their chair when they saw him in the England squad.
Yeah.
So if he's picking him for those reasons, is he going to play him?
I've got two questions. How wobbly are the chairs in that office?
We'd like to know that.
I would like to know that.
Every single one falling off at the same time.
Yeah,
it seems like unlikely to me.
What, are the offices in Amsterdam as well?
Do you know what I was thinking? That's a prank. That's a prank, that.
I'll leave that there.
So fill in the blanks for me. From the back to front. So you need to find me another centre-back. You need to find me someone to partner Rice. And you need to find the three behind Kane.
So so those in contention for centre-half, really.
I know who's in contention because I know who's in the squad. Tell me who's going to play.
No, because I don't think Konsa's going to start. Who would be a centre-half? I think... I think he may well start either Dan Burn or Ezri Konsa. I know some people might say Levi Colwill.
You just named all the players.
No, I didn't, because I just said Konsa to one side.
Oh, okay, fine.
I don't think he'll play Burn because of his lack of experience at international level. I think Burn could start against Latvia. But in this first game, I'm looking at Colwill and I'm looking at Konsa. So I'm just kind of narrowing it down for everybody.
Yeah.
I suspect it'll be one of those. Konsa is the man in that position with the most experience. He got minutes, not many, but he got minutes at the Euros. Now, Konsa's often been deployed as a fullback. So I want to say Konsa, but then I go, but he's often been played as fullback. So if I'm going to have a go, I think he'll start Gay as the left-sided centre-half.
Because Konsa can play as the right-sided one, right?
Exactly. And I think he'll go for Konsa in the centre. And I think he'll go with Reece James at right back. That would be what I would think.
Next to Rice?
And now we move on to the midfield. Exactly. What I would like to see, I think that if England had a midfield three of Rice, Curtis Jones and Bellingham, I think that's very strong.
Because Bellingham played off the left against Spain in the Euros.
But that was a specific game plan for a specific match.
And he did well, though.
He did. Limited as it was obvious, but I
think he did all right, didn't he?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything to go on. I mean, he was the left side of a four. I think that Bellingham, 9 times out of 10 for England, has been playing almost like in that number 10 role.
Yeah, that's what
supporting Kane or whoever's up.
I want
top.
Bellingham to play further back.
I know you do, and I wonder if we may well see that in time. But I think that he will probably keep Bellingham in that position.
What, in the number 10?
Yeah,
in the jam role.
In the jam role, absolutely right. And because if you look at the other candidates in midfield, Eberechi Eze is down as a midfielder. I don't think he'll start. He may well come on, maybe against Latvia or something. But I don't think.
Well, surely he's going to play off the wide position. Anyway,
well, you would think so. I'm saying who have they on the website? That's who they've got in midfield.
On the website.
On the England...
Just say in the squad.
In the squad.
On the website. It's not like a 2002 episode of Tomorrow's World. Just say it in the squad.
No, but on the official website.
Oh, the official website.
Sorry, that's what I meant. Sorry, yeah.
I thought you used some kind of hooky fan website. It's a blog, MySpace blog.
On MarcusSpeller.com. He's down as a midfielder.
You've only got .co.uk, haven't you? Someone else got the .com, didn't they?
Did they?
Crypto guy, yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I haven't done any of this. I defer to Pete on that. So I think, as ridiculous it would be, I think there is a slight chance that he may play Henderson against Albania. I don't think he should. But if you look around, Luke, help me out here, because Bellingham, who actually is listed as a forward, interestingly enough, Bellingham will play in that midfield three. Then who do you go? It's not going to be Eze. It's unlikely he would start Gibbs White because he would probably step on Bellingham's toes, presumably, and also Gibbs White has just been called up because of Palmer. Palmer's not there. Declan Rice will be in. Morgan Rogers, Curtis Jones, Jordan Henderson. To me, if you are talking about a 4-2-3-1, the only person that could play next to Rice would be Henderson or Curtis Jones. I know Curtis Jones.
I agree.
Curtis Jones can play in all sorts of positions in the midfield. So I understand Liverpool fans that he's not always played there, but I think he's that good a footballer. He can do it. So I'd like to see him go with Curtis Jones in there. However, you've asked me a question. What do I think he's going to do? I actually think he's going to do that. I think he's going to play Rice, Jones and Bellingham.
Okay.
And I'd like to see that.
And then
because if you think about any other candidate, I think that Jones is the most suited there.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that, other than the fact that kind of an extension.
Well, what do you think then? Because you seem to be slightly hesitant. I don't understand why.
Just because
it's Jones or Henderson. I think if you're gonna.
Yeah, well, it probably is. But all I was going to say was that I think ask you if it's a problem that Jones, doesn't always start for Liverpool.
No, I don't think it's a problem.
And he's also almost one of those players who's he's such a good, tool. He can play in so many different ways. And I think sometimes the way Slot uses him is to be like, right, he's on the bench 50% of the time, and whatever we need, he'll do for us.
I mean, he nearly changed the cup final.
Yeah, I think that's an exaggeration. I think he was decent when he came on, but I don't think they weren't going to be denied.
But fine. But I think he's played enough football, and I think he's involved enough for anybody.
Well, if we go with what you're saying, because otherwise we're going to talk about it all day, we just need to find the two wide forwards that are going to play then.
Yeah, and I think he'll play Anthony Gordon on the left, which is, I think, what he should do. And then I think he'd probably play Phil Foden on the right, just because we know that Phil Foden's ceiling is higher than that of Jared Bowen, for example. And I think that's what he'll probably do. Foden's not had a great season, nobody has, but he's had a few moments. He's still Phil Foden, though, I understand.
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably what he'll do.
Well, we'll see. So do you want to just summarise it? So Pickford, Mars Lewis-Skelly.
At left back, obviously.
Gay, Konsa, James, Rice, Jones, Bellingham, and then
Gordon, Kane,
and Foden.
Yeah. You did pick the easy positions there. You gave me some.
Well, I only picked the ones that I felt like I could pick.
Yeah, well, obviously. Or you went for Pickford and Kane and Rice.
You know more about England than me, though.
No,
so
we've watched them the same. Stop that.
No, you've watched them a lot more than me back in the day.
I watched it over and over again.
I only started watching them because I thought there was money in it on this show.
It's a great time to go for a break. Coming up after this, we try to identify the potential surprise packages for Thomas Tuchel's England. Welcome back to the Football Ramble, everybody. We've got a question from Brady on X. Which players do you think are the most likely candidates to be surprise packages under Tuchel? For example, it could be players who suddenly emerge as really important to the squad, maybe as starters that we weren't expecting.
It's really difficult to say. I understand why Brady's asking that question, but I do think it's almost an impossible one to answer. Why don't I answer it this way? I think there's a real opportunity for a good handful of players here to really stamp their position down. And we've got a situation now, particularly with attacking players, because I think the credentials are slightly different when it comes to attacking players. You're looking for different things. When you're looking for defensive players, you're looking for reliability, not making mistakes, not let you down, being available, not being injured, that kind of stuff. With attacking players, like, can you make something happen? So I think the two best candidates to be quote unquote surprise packages for England in this period, bearing in mind they've got 9 and 2 caps respectively, are probably Anthony Gordon and Morgan Gibbs-White. And the reason for that is they always try and make things happen.
Yeah.
And at international level, I believe, particularly when you're playing against 90% of the opposition you play against, these guys are going to be used to playing at a much higher standard against much tougher defenders in the Premier League every week. And these players always look to make things happen. They don't hide. They really kind of force themselves to do positive things, which is why I was so surprised that Gibbs-White was left out the initial squad. And if you look at the age as well, 24 and 25, like exactly the kind of point where they can start to really push on, particularly when you think about a player like, you could argue probably that Rashford has probably had more caps than maybe he deserves, given his inconsistency. 60 caps for England.
It's a lot of caps.
He's now in a position where he's been given
it's more than Paul Gascoigne, for example.
He's been given more than Hoddle as well, I think. He's been given a position in this squad because he's had a little bit of resurgency at Aston Villa. I understand that, but it's not unreasonable to suggest that it won't last and that his next move that he does next is really important. So I think someone like Gordon, someone like Gibbs-White could have a real opportunity there to really stamp their authority. If I were to say a couple of players it's hard to do that with, it's going to be people like Ramsdale, people like Henderson and Trafford for obvious reasons. Someone like Dominic Solanke. He probably deserves a bit better. He probably deserves to be the best of the rest and being bled in now, but I don't think he will be. Yeah. Even though Kane's a declining force, he's still good enough. Yeah. And so he's not going to get that look in, whereas I think Gordon and Gibbs-White may do.
We always look at attacking players, don't we, when we think about surprise packages and important players.
I think so, yeah.
There may well be defenders like someone like Tino Livramento, like he played left back or right back.
I think that can be a problem, though. So sorry to cut in, but just to build on that, I know I've said that Gibbs-White, he's probably not going to play in this Albania game, and I think we agree on that. what Gibbs White benefits from in a way that, say, Morgan Rogers doesn't is he always plays in the hole. He always plays in that position where he can make things happen. If you look at Liv Morento, look at Rogers, look at some of these other players, we've seen players in the past ring and not been able to nail a specific roll down. You could argue possibly Curtis Jones might suffer from that as well. So you've got to look at Gordon always plays in the same way, but he's good at it. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, yeah. I mean, I was going to mention Gibbs White as well. I think a lot of people are very excited about him. The only other one I was going to mention who did go to the Euros was Eberechi Eze, because I just think he offers something really well. You know, he's great at carrying the ball. He can shoot. He's better shot at him than, say, Anthony Gordon, for example, and he would be after that position. But with Eze as well, I think he can fit into slightly more different places than, say, Gordon can. Now, I know you just said that goes against. I don't think it's wildly different. But I don't know. I love watching him play, and his temperament and the energy he can bring and the explosiveness as well. And I think we didn't see that at the Euros for obvious reasons because England were very, very constrained at the Euros. I keep going on, and
it's hard to hit your straps at England as well because you don't play as often.
Yeah, and I will mention this point time and time again and bore everybody to tears. The heat of North America is going to be something that England are going to struggle with.
Can I also just add with Eze?
So someone coming on with a bit of energy and a bit of dynamism, I think, will be vitally important.
I agree, but
assuming England qualify for the tournament, I always have to put that caveat in.
True.
I remember '94 and 2008.
I think this should be a qualification caveat-free zone, actually. We're celebrating on this show.
Okay.
But one thing that may completely undermine what I've just said, maybe about someone like Gibbs White, when it comes to Eze does his best work through the middle. Eze does his best work from a starting position through the middle. He's always involved. If you look at his statistics for starting through in the hole, I think he's played, I just got it here, he's played 23 times for Palace there this season. It's 9 assists and 4 goals. In any other position that he's played in the Premier League, no goals, no assists. He has to be involved. He has to be on the ball. And I think sometimes we think of him as a wide forward.
Yeah.
But I think for Palace, a lot of the time he starts through the middle, and that's important. So as ever with England, particularly in these positions, in this generation of talent, a lot of competition for places, and it'll be whoever really grabs it and shows himself to be reliable. Yeah,
indeed. We've got a question from Paul on email. How much importance should we put on Tuchel's first squad? That is a good question. Joe Hart, Gary Cahill and Ryan Bertrand all played in Gareth Southgate's first match. Is it likely that we could see a similar turnover of players before the World Cup next summer? I think that is a good point from Paul there. I think sometimes we can really scrutinise this, and we have done. And somebody said to me recently with regard to Jordan Henderson, he went, you could just be having a look at him. Now, I would say with regard to Henderson, Tuchel then said all that stuff about him. Yeah, but he embodies this and that and so on. I suppose Tuchel would say that, wouldn't he? He's not going to go, yeah, I
he's a busted flush. Yeah, I couldn't think of anyone else.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not gonna say that, is he?
So he's, Tuchel has managed many a press conference in his time.
Yeah.
And when the going got tough at Chelsea, he was very statesmanlike, wasn't he? When that was obviously very, very different circumstances and so on. So he knows how to handle himself.
Yeah.
How much importance should we put on this first squad? I think the reason why we are putting a lot of importance on it is we always do that. We're excited. But also he's here for, quite a short time. And he's made a lot of noises about, right, this is my first of only a handful of camps before.
So it's 6 camps in total and 60 days of working with the England players.
Which is why maybe that you and I are scrutinising it a bit more than perhaps.
But I think that's why we should. My answer, Marcus, would just be it's much more important than the Southgate example that Paul used, because for 2 reasons, right? One, England were in the absolute mud when Southgate took over, and so he could afford really to do what he wanted, and he had a lot more room to go, oh, look, I want to know what I think of these players.
And there was much less interest.
Yeah, there was. Anything was better than what came before, essentially, was the position with Southgate. And 2, Southgate had more time. It was open-ended. Southgate was given an assignment where it was like, look, reimagine what it means to play for England, which, to be fair, he did.
Don't embarrass us on the stage, on the world stage.
As well as that, yeah. Tuchel was on a much tighter schedule. 6 camps, 60 days of working with them. Every squad training session and game counts if they're going to try and achieve their stated aim, as you've touched on. So he hasn't got a huge amount of time. On the other hand, the time he does have is kind of easier in a way because than maybe some other nations would be in this situation, because really, at the risk of getting all the Scottish people listening to this to turn off, England are better than most of the teams they play. So he can experiment within that high pressure environment to an extent. But I do think, you can't you can't say things in press conferences like we've got X amount of time to work together so the pressure's on, and then just go, oh, do you know what, I'm going to have a little play around with it. I just don't see how those two things add up. So he does need to be careful. So I think it's a different situation than the Southgate example that Paul uses.
I think that's a good, I think that's fair. Next question from Liam on Insta. Is winning all that matters, or are we also expecting attractive football?
Depends who you ask.
It does depend who you ask. But what about for us? I think for me, look at the Euros, for example. England were dire to watch, quite frankly. They really were. Had we got past Spain, which of course we didn't, then that wouldn't have mattered. But we kind of knew it was Southgate's last tournament, etc., etc. But people were really, really disappointed, though, that England at times really stank that tournament out.
Yeah.
And I think with Tuchel, because of that, I think they want to see a little bit more. He's already said, hasn't he? We're going to be on the front foot. We're going to be intense. Okay? Again, mention the weather in North America. But, that's what he says.
I don't want you to mention it anymore. You've already done it now.
Okay, I've done it today.
You think about Jack Charlton with his cap on.
I am,
John Aldridge.
I'm thinking of him saying, I've got to give me lads some water, which is how they sound in Tuchel's hometown. So I think with...
Wasser.
You can only really answer this with hindsight after the tournament, in that if England win the World Cup, it won't matter.
Yeah.
But of course, we don't have that. So I think it needs to be not necessarily attractive, like say a Pep Guardiola or a Spanish side, because England don't have that. And Tuchel's going to lean in, as he says, to kind of English footballing culture and how we kind of traditionally have played football a little bit here, which is kind of what Klopp did actually. Klopp was inspired a lot by teams in like the 70s and the 80s in England. But anyway, with getting back on track, I think it does matter how England approach things, and I think they've got to be proactive and they've got to play more attacking football.
Let's answer this in an interesting, creative way. What do you think are the two main reasons that Gareth Southgate left the job of England manager?
I think that he felt that he'd would have outstayed his welcome. He realised that.
Got to the end of a cycle.
Got to the end of the cycle.
And what's the second one?
And the second one, I think he was probably so exhausted personally.
So I think the second one is the football was shit.
Right.
And so the pressure became higher.
Well, I think the reason why the football was a bit poor is, he said, didn't he? We're not telling them to drop deep. He said that in a press conference.
But what I'm getting at is that if England had got to two finals in a row in the Euros and had life or death with France in the World Cup, which can happen, and that was the record, and it was based on a foundation of playing good football as well, would he have left his job?
I think that there would have been more of a clamber by the fans for him to stay.
I think the answer is he wouldn't have left his job. So I think that what that leads me to believe is that even if it's just one of the three main reasons, if you're saying personal exhaustion, coming to the end of a cycle was the other two, we can have three. Yeah. One of them is definitely the football that was being played. You can't say it didn't affect it.
No.
So in that case, the answer is it must be important. It must be important to play attractive football. It has to be.
Yeah. So he based his England campaigns, and he looked at Portugal in 2016, which was drab football, but they won it, and France in 2018, which wasn't drab football at times, but they chose to be very pragmatic under Deschamps. But at times they could mix it. That 4-3 against Argentina, they scored 4 goals in the final, for crying out loud. And that's what he looked at. And he said, that's the kind of the recipe that we're going to try and serve up here. And it nearly happened. But I think as well, though, when he tried to be a bit more expansive, which he did in Qatar, they lost at the quarterfinal. And then in Germany in the last Euros, Bellingham was exhausted. Kane was playing on one leg. There were circumstances.
But he didn't have to pick him, did he? No,
he didn't have to pick him, and that's So there's other reasons, but I think your point it goes into this. That means we both feel that Tuchel has to be more, whether it's attractive or exciting or attacking. He can't do what Southgate does unless he wants to get people and public opinion turn against him very quickly.
Yeah, it's a really funny situation.
He's had the Lee Carsley buffer.
I tell you, well, the Lee Carsley interregnum makes it really tough to answer a lot of these questions because you're looking for the most recent evidence of how England have played and what they've done. But actually, it's such an anomaly that it's difficult to read much into it under Carsley. And then you go back to the later stages of the Euros, which is quite some time ago now, and it all becomes a bit unhelpful. But what I would say is that clearly, England fans who are able to exert an amount of pressure on a manager, and they've shown that time and time again, and they did exert a pressure on Southgate, expect England to play good football because a lot of England fans see the fact that we've got good players, and that's the calculation they make. I remember speaking to a couple of journalists at an event in the summer, and they were really down on how England were playing.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to both of them, if England win the Euros here, what are you going to do? Are you going to change your narrative? Are you going to change how you write about them? Because ultimately the ends justifies the means. And they both said no, because it's still been inexcusable. So I said, well, hang on a minute then. So you still wouldn't really be happy if England won it?
Yeah.
Not really, because the way they're playing. So for me, it comes down to the idea that conversation between winning on one hand and playing good football on the other hand, they're quite uneasy bedfellows. And one of the reasons for that is because we can't even agree as a football watching public what quote unquote good football is anyway.
Yeah, but
it's different for different people. A lot of people say they thought Barcelona on the Guardiola was boring.
Yeah, but it became boring because there was the one all the time. No, I don't think there's a discussion here like there is in the Netherlands, for example, about style of football and winning and all that kind of stuff. I think people want to win here, obviously, because it's been so bloody long. It's not a memory for the vast majority of us. But they don't want it to be conservative and drab, and that's what England were during the summer. We did a Ramble watch along against Slovenia, and we tried to have a bit of a sing song and a cheer after it, and there was a little something there. But it was how different it was between
the Ramble fans are very dour, though, aren't they?
Nonsense, absolute nonsense.
They're a great bunch, actually.
They are.
They want an excuse to have a good time.
Indeed, and a 0-0 against Slovenia, funnily enough, does put a dampener on the evening.
Yeah,
but again. People were, and myself included, you can go back and listen. Why would you? I'm going to tell you now that I was wanting Anthony Gordon in the side during the Euros because just a bit of something.
I called up for him as well.
Well done, you.
I started him in my first 11.
Yes.
And a lot of eyebrows were raised, Marcus.
There we are. But
you and Ancelotti.
That's just what we do.
Yeah.
But just a bit of something, a bit of flipping titillation on the pitch. Do you know what I mean? And it was drab. And I think people were kind of, people got a bit fed up with it. I love Southgate, but as I say, the football in the tournament, you can't defend in the name of attractive and fun football. And that Spain side won that tournament playing beautiful attacking football. I don't think England can necessarily emulate that because, again, Spain is, at the moment, and I would extend that to Portugal. Iberia is really the brain of football at the moment in that part of the world, and the players they produce and all the rest of it. So there's no point in trying to emulate that per se, but to make it a bit more exciting and a bit more eye-catching, I think can be achieved. Newcastle under Howe are not, say, attractive in a sort of a tiki-taka sense or whatever word you want to use.
There's no point comparing it to club football, is there?
But they play in a way that gets you off your seat sometimes, or certainly gets those fans off their seat. And I think people want to see that with England. Tuchel has said that's what he wants to do as well. So he's setting his stall out that way. Yes, of course, as time goes on, if it's kind of, we're in the latter stages of the tournament, we're in a tasty quarter-final, semi-final, let's just get over the line kind of thing. But I don't think in the lead up to that, people want to see.
It'll feel different because it's not going to be as long. People will be just counting the days if it turns out to be shit.
Yeah.
He's going to play. He's going to, obviously, providing they qualify, he's going to be the manager for the World Cup, and that's it.
And they want to see our young attacking flair players released a little bit, I think.
But we're not answering the question. The question is that they've stated that they want to win the World Cup. They've not stated how they're going to do it. So maybe that tells its own story.
I think people are expecting a bit more attractive football in, is what I would say.
Well, compared to this last summer, they will be, yeah.
There you go. We're going to finish with this question from Stuart on Blue Sky. Are we prepared for having an England manager wearing a baseball cap? Is there any other headgear he could wear that is a bit more English? A top hat, perhaps?
I think a bowler hat. I think if he doesn't turn out in a pinstripe suit, a bowler hat and an umbrella with a roast beef under his arm, he needs to have a look at himself.
I think a bowler hat he'd look really good in. I think the cap suits him.
Imagine him coming out in a bowler hat with the England badge on it, and your Sven waistcoat. That'd be lovely.
It's not Sven waistcoat; it's an England waistcoat. Gareth Southgate waistcoat.
Yeah, true. I think it'll be really tediously interesting, if that makes sense, to hear how he's received when he comes out for the first game. If he's going to take his baseball cap off when England have the anthem, is he going to whistle it? Is he going to do something disrespectful? People just desperate for shit to happen because he's German. I don't think it. I always just get really disappointed when you see the Super Bowl and the NFL coaches are wearing their tracksuits and stuff. Like for the Super Bowl, you should be wearing a suit.
Yeah.
But it never happens. And same with a cup final. Wear a suit.
Tuchel loves to raid the club shop wherever
He
is.
does. And I think as part of the deal as being England manager, I think you do get like an outfitter and stuff like that. So I wonder if he'll break with tradition. People are expecting him to wear his apparel, but he might not wear his apparel.
Is he going to go M&S like Southgate?
I don't know if it'll be M&S. Hugo Boss, maybe.
Yeah, Matt. Well, whoever's the England suit provider or whatever.
Exactly. We'll see.
Is going to be interesting.
Is it disrespectful to wear a baseball cap if you're England manager?
Not if you're not English.
Okay. There you go.
So if him or Tony Pulis if Pulis ever manages England, he can wear the baseball cap. Welsh.
What a thought that is to end on.
Thanks.
Right, it's big announcement. Next England manager. It is Pulis, actually. Is it? It's Pulis. Great.
We go for a pragmatic Welshman.
He's picked Henderson again. And Rory Delap.
Oh dear. Why Rory Delap?
Long throw, isn't it?
Yeah,
I know he's not English.
He's Irish.
His son is, though.
There you go. You could have gone for him.